So you've had your RX-29 for some time and it's not running like it used to. Well, there's a big advantage of having a mechanical sieve shaker, and that's the ability to replace virtually any part of the row tap yourself. We've created two different types of maintenance kits just for this situation. The minor maintenance kit, which has the more commonly replaced parts such as 2 eccentric discs, 1 brass flange bushing, 1 brass bearing, 1 cork, and 2 black flange bearings. Then we have the major maintenance kit, which includes all the minor maintenance kit items, plus some more major parts as well, such as 1 timing belt, 1 upper carrying plate, 1 cam gear, and 1 timing belt pulley. So replacing some of these parts, pretty easy. Like the cork, you just put it in, just cork it. But some of the other ones involve taking most of the row tap apart. So we'll start with the easier ones and go from there. So to replace the timing belt, place the row tap on its side and use a 3/8" socket with a drill to loosen the 4 bolts holding the motor in place. No need to remove the bolts since you can move the whole motor system to the right while still being in the openings. Remove the old timing belt and replace it with the new timing belt by wrapping it around the motor pulley and the timing belt pulley. Slide the bolts back to the center to the opening and tighten the bolts back down using the 3/8" drill. The timing belt should move smoothly on the pulley system. So far, pretty straightforward. To remove the timing belt pulley, do the same steps as removing the timing belt. Once completed, use the drill to remove the 3/8" screw to loosen the timing belt pulley. Remove the old timing belt pulley and replace it with a new one. Put the screw back in, tighten with the drill, and go through the same steps as putting the timing belt together. Okay, moving to the other side of the row tap for a second. Now for the flange bushings. Use a number 10 Allen key. Remove the small screw on top of the hammer. Using a hammer and a bar or screwdriver, remove the hammer pin and the row tap hammer. This will give you access to the flange bushings. You could remove the bushings after this step, but we went ahead and removed the hammer block for ease of access. We did this by first removing the pedestal cover and using a drill to remove the 3/4" bolt on the inside to remove the hammer block from the top of the row tap. Then, using a bar or screwdriver, tap out the flange bushings from the hammer block. When replacing the flange bushings, set the bushings in the opening and use a rubber mallet to install them in the hammer block. Now that they're replaced, put the row tap back together using the same steps in reverse. To replace the cam gear, follow every step like you're removing the timing belt pulley. Once completed, remove the screws to open the pedestal cover, revealing the inside of the row tap. You'll have to remove a few things to be able to access the back of the cam gear. First, remove the lift rod coupling around the nearest rod. Remove the lift rods and coupling and then begin to remove the control panel. Detach all the wires that are holding the control panel in place to remove the control panel. Using a socket wrench and drill, remove the bolt and remove the old cam gear. Then install the new cam gear. Use the drill to tighten the bolt into the new cam gear, then repeat the earlier steps in reverse. Make sure when installing the rod that it is seated at the perfect height designed for the mechanical row tap. It's best to use a pre-made gauge in order to make sure that it is perfect. Now for the upper carrying plate, remove the pedestal cover, remove the 1/2" bolt from the top of the row tap, remove the hammer and the black and blue panel sitting under the hammer, then remove the 2 3/8" bolts from the top of the old upper carrying plate. The carrying plate is a very snug fit, so some lighter hammer taps may be necessary to free it from the eccentric disc. Once free, then replace it with the new upper carrying plate, bolt it down, add the black and blue top pieces back on, and the hammer block, and then tighten the bolt down. Now for the 2 eccentric discs, you're going to need to take a lot more apart. The 2 eccentric discs are identical. One goes on top and the other one goes on the bottom. We'll start with the top. So follow every step like you're replacing the upper carrying plate. Once everything's removed, with a little bit of finesse, the upper eccentric disc should be able to be removed by hand. Once removed, replace it with the new eccentric disc by hand. A few minor hammer taps can be necessary to install it correctly. Make sure that the top rod is completely flush with the disc. If it's not, then some light taps from the bottom of the rod may also be necessary. Once flush, gently add the rectangular metal bar back inside the rod and disc. Now you can reinstall all the other parts of the row tap. To remove the bottom eccentric disc, go through all the steps of removing the timing belt pulley. Then also go through all the steps of removing the upper carrying plate without removing the upper carrying plate. Once completed, remove the square backup plate on the bottom of the row tap by using the 3/8" socket. Then using a bar or screwdriver, tap on it until it's free from the bottom eccentric disc. Remove the disc by hand and then replace it with the new eccentric disc. Fit the new disc back into the rod and gently tap the small rectangular metal bar into the groove of the rod. Then gently tap the eccentric disc until it's snug against the bottom of the row tap. Then follow all of the steps in reverse. And finally, for the last 2 pieces, the brass bearing and the flange bushing. The flange bushing goes on the top and the bearing goes on the bottom, but both require the exact same steps to be removed and installed, which means literally taking everything apart plus a little bit more. So remove everything like you're removing both eccentric discs. You'll also want to remove the lower carrying plate from the row tap by removing the 2 extra screws attached to the plate. Once completed, remove the rod that is seated inside the bearing and flange bushing. Once removed, then you'll have ease of access to removing the brass bearing. It's best to remove remove the bearing by using a rod that perfectly fits the diameter of the opening, then use a hammer to remove the bearing. For the brass flange bushing, we find it's easier to tap the bushing out slightly using a rod and then placing a bolt and washer inside the small opening created. Then using the rotap rod, hammer that into the bushing to remove it the rest of the way. When installing the bearing and bushing, we use a tool designed specifically to house both parts since they're the same size. Using a hammer and a lot of force, they can be slowly forced back into the openings until flush with the rotap frame. Now that the near bearing and flange bushing are installed, the force from the installation has compromised the size of the opening. The rods won't be able to be put in place without damaging them. So using a flexible cylinder hone for soft metals, either 180 or 240 grit at a 1-inch diameter, attached to a drill, slowly reshape the opening so that the rod can be easily installed back into the opening. This will take some time though, so be patient. W.S. Tyler has a tool specifically designed to reshape these 1-inch openings, so if you got it, then definitely use it. After they're reshaped, then follow all the steps in reverse. And that is how you install every major and minor component in the maintenance kits for the RX-29 sieve shaker. I hope you enjoyed it and it shed some light on how to replace these parts for you. And that's the beauty of mechanical sieve shakers. The maintenance is very much within your control. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, click our Talk to Us button to get in contact with our many experts on woven wire mesh. And if you'd like to learn more about woven wire mesh or our many products, we have a learning center filled with written and video content to make you an expert. We also have a YouTube channel. And don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to keep up with all things W.S. Tyler. Once again, my name is Andrew Kotlar, and I'll see you around in the next video. Bye for now.